President Trump is capping a week of racist rhetoric by claiming he disagreed with the disturbing chant that broke out at his campaign rally. On Sunday, the president tweeted that 4 Democratic members of Congress, all U.S. citizens and women of color, should go back to the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came. A racist trope that even the federal government considers to be discrimination officially. Day after day, Trump continued to defend those comments, and so did congressional Republicans, with only 4 voting with Democrats on a resolution to condemn the tweets in the House, the chamber's first rebuke of a president in more than 100 years. Then, at a Wednesday night rally, Trump launched into a tirade about the Congresswoman, declaring that they hate our country and feeding the crowd's fury.
They're always telling us how to run it, how to do this, how to do that. You know what? If they don't love it, tell them to leave it.
Even though, as we just played for you, the president endorsed the crowd sentiment shortly after the chant, the blowback was severe. The New York Times reports that Trump allies flooded the upper echelons of his team with expressions of concern. House Republican leaders pleaded with Vice President Mike Pence on Thursday to separate the party from the message, leading to this attempt by the president to distance himself.
When your supporters last night were chanting, "Send her back," why didn't you stop them? Why didn't you ask them to stop saying that?
Well, number one, I think I did. I started speaking very quickly. It really was a loud, I disagree with it, by the way, but it was quite a chant. And I felt a little bit badly about it, but I will say this, I did, and I started speaking very quickly.
But that's not true. Our friends on the 11th Hour put together this video fact check.
Mr. President, if I may, when your supporters last night were chanting, "Send her back," why didn't you stop them? Why didn't you ask them to stop saying that?
Well, number one, I think I did. I started speaking very quickly. It really was a loud, I disagree with it, by the way, but it was quite a chant. And I felt a little bit badly about it. But I will say this, I did, and I started speaking very quickly. But it started up rather fast, as you probably noticed.
So, Susan Del Percio, this is one of those examples. We had said it before with Paul Ryan when he endorsed Donald Trump. We said you never give this guy a free pass or else you'll pay for it. Well, that's all the Republicans have been doing. And a couple of days ago, they all voted, except for 4, to give him a free pass on making his racist statements about sending Congresswoman Omar back. 2 days later, it blows up in their face politically, and they actually suddenly find themselves panicked for good reason, because you're hearing chants that, I don't know, maybe people would have heard in the Nuremberg rallies about sending people back. There's a president trying to back up. What exactly do you think happened yesterday, and why do you think Republicans were finally, rightfully panicked?
Because you're right, Joe, there was a lot of blowback coming from elected officials, and some elected officials that that the president listens to and respects. So that was a concern. We hear, and I hate to give her any real credit, but we hear Ivanka Trump did say, did speak to her father too, saying this was a bit too far. But for all of those members of Congress who did not vote with the Democrats on this racist statement that the president made, people will remember. And as the president is fond of saying, I'm president and you're not, which means those elected officials who have been quiet, people will remember. You will not survive this. That's why people like me are still in the Republican Party, because we will be there to remind people of it. The other thing I just want to mention, and that video that you showed on the top of the show that Mika was saying you can watch it over and over, it's really touching, because it shows that these are women living the American dream when you really think about it. And when you look at what Donald Trump is doing, he's saying only certain people are allowed to live the American dream. If you're a person of color, you're not entitled to live the American dream. I dictate who will live the American dream. And that is really something that is so disturbing and goes against everything that makes up the fabric of our country. And that is what scares me the most.
If you look, though, at the reception that she received when she went home to her airport, she would have never received that reception but for Donald Trump. It's just like when he attacks people that write books about him. All he does is fuel their book sales. And again, you would think he could figure this out, but he elevates those that he's trying to hurt. I'll tell you some people who are going to pay in 2020 if they're not careful, and you brought this up. People like Joni Ernst in Iowa. I didn't. Maybe she made a statement. I haven't heard a statement from her. Cory Gardner in Colorado. I'm not sure if Cory Gardner made a statement, but he's up in a very swing state, another swing state in Maine, Susan Collins. It's hard to see how she survives in 2020. I didn't hear her speak out forcefully against this. And of course, Thom Tillis, who I must say has been such a great disappointment. Thom Tillis in a very competitive race. And earlier this week, the Republican from North Carolina ducked a question about President Trump's "Go Back to Your Country" tweet, telling NBC News, quote, "I literally don't go on Twitter." Then on Wednesday night, Tillis was in the audience. He was there at the North Carolina rally where the crowd started chanting and clapping, with a crowd chanting, "Send her back." In an interview on Fox News yesterday, Senator Tillis once again refused to condemn the president or confuse the chanting, and argued that the president couldn't control the crowd.
Anytime you get into a crowd like that, you've got a lot of supporters. They're going to say what they want to say.
This is your home state, and the people in that arena are being characterized as racist. And you're going to face questions about this. To them, what do you say, Senator?
Well, I refuse to take that bait. This is about people who want to change America. This is about people who have a socialist vision for the United States.
Hey, what bait? You're just being asked to call out chants.
Inspired by a president who dug into Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, threatened her life by basically having at her on stage, confirming that the tweets that he put out there were about those four congresswomen. And he went after her time and time again on stage, inspiring the crowd to chant. Where is Thom Tillis? Like, is he on Mars?
No,
does he really think?
Thom Tillis is not. He doesn't represent the people of North Carolina. Thom Tillis represents Donald Trump.
Got it.
And so good luck with that in 2020, because there are a lot of people in North Carolina, which went for Barack Obama in 2008. There are a lot of people in North Carolina who actually want somebody to represent all the people of North Carolina and not be in Donald Trump's back pocket right now. And it's sad. Thom Tillis is nothing more than a stooge for Donald Trump, allowing these rants that a lot of Republicans quietly were saying sounded like fascist chants, telling people to go back to their home countries when their home country is the United States of America. Now, listen, I want you to compare that to another North Carolina member of Congress that you saw in that crowd, Mark Walker. He said that does not need to be our campaign call like we did with Lock Her Up last time. Walker is a consistent Trump supporter, but he described the chant, which he witnessed firsthand, rightfully, as offensive. And
not hard.
Eugene Robinson, I think these Republicans are figuring out what we talked about on the show yesterday, which is Donald Trump actually thinks that Omar is going to be the face of the Democratic Party. The face of the Democratic Party is going to be whoever the Democratic Party nominates.
Exactly.
If it is Bernie Sanders, he'll be the face of the Democratic Party. If it's Elizabeth Warren, she'll be the face of the Democratic Party. And if it's Joe Biden, Biden will be the face of the Democratic Party. And what Donald does not understand, because this is his first time running for re-election, any extremists on the left, that actually plays into Biden's hands. He gets, I'm a Democrat, but you know what? Those people are, it's sort of like his Sister Souljah moment with whether it's Bernie Sanders or whoever. It's a little too radical for me. I'm a middle American guy just like you. I don't want to socialize things like Bernie does. And I know this from experience because I had Republican presidential candidates doing that to me and my friends in Congress for years. So there's no good end for Donald Trump here. The only thing that happens is he inspires people in the suburbs, women, people of color, those who he's offending. Independents. He inspires them to register, to get out of vote, and to vote Donald Trump out of office.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, how many times in American political history has a party nominee, sort of appealed to the base during the primary season and then tacked more toward the middle in the general election? Approximately every single time. So one could, of course, that same thing will happen. And you're right, the face of the party will be the eventual nominee. It won't be for freshman congresswomen, as Trump would like it to be. I did want to point out something else that was said, that Trump said at that rally, that for obvious reasons didn't get the attention that chant did. But at one point he says, they're always telling us how to run the country, as if us, white people, have the exclusive right to say how the country is run, and they, these uppity women of color who happen to have been elected to Congress, and this happens to be their job, but they have no right to have a voice in how the country is being run. And I haven't heard anybody on the Republican side condemn that sentiment either, but they should, because that's not the way America is supposed to work.
Donnie, we've talked about the great mystery of Donald Trump from the beginning of his presidency, a guy who is driven to be liked, a guy who I'm sure would like to be reelected, and yet he acts in a way that it ensures only that he boils down his support to 35-36%, while leaving educated people, suburbanites, people of color, women, all against him. I want to say this again, Donnie. Everybody is like, oh, no, there's no checks on Donald Trump and he's going to be a dictator. No, we had a check. It was called an election. Republicans lost in a way that no other party lost. The biggest voting landslide against the Republican Party ever in 2018. We've got another election coming up, and this sort of garbage, just like Charlottesville, is what makes voters say, I will never forgive, I will never forget, and I will let nothing stand in my way on Election Day of voting this guy out of office. Donald Trump won in 2016 because the African-American vote was at a 20-year low. What Donald Trump did yesterday, and what he did with Charlottesville, will ensure that in 2020, the African-American vote will be at a 20, 30, 40-year high.
Joe, to that point, I have a message to those words, but you mentioned the word fascist and Nuremberg. I want to send our audience to two articles, one by Tom Snyder in the New York Times, June 14th, How Did the Nazis Gain Power in Germany, and one by Waitman Wade Bourne in the Washington Post. It's not wrong to compare Trump's America to the Holocaust. I want people to go back and look at Nazi Germany in the early 30s, because the parallels are stunning. Stunning, and it can't happen here, it can't happen here. It can happen here. And I want to challenge people. I did this the other day. I want to challenge people of means. I'm not talking about people who need a job and believe Trump is going to get it for him. If you vote for, you can no longer now say, well, he's good for the economy, and he's good for Israel. By the way, he would throw Israel overboard in a second if it was better for him. Do not kid yourself. And you own it now. If you're the person that votes for Donald Trump, you are no different than if you were watching on the subway 5 white nationalists berate an African-American woman saying, go back to where you came from, and then you hid and you put your head home. You can't hide behind the economy anymore. You own it. You don't get to do that anymore. And I think that's critical. It's you know, it's interesting. We keep talking about race. We keep always talking about minorities. It's on white people. It really, really is. You don't get to say, he's good for the economy, and they all say stuff like that. No, they don't. This is a man with Nazi tendencies. Well, I'm not going to use the word fascist anymore. And I don't have to go through the list. And if reporters asked him, Mr. President, do you think you should stay beyond 8 years? He'll give you his honest answers because they show themselves. Mr. President, do you think your opponents, do you think people in the press should be put in jail? He'll answer it. Let's see who's there. And by the way, he went into this rant the week after he got his highest approving ratings ever, is 45%. It shows when he's feeling power what he's capable of. I believe he is capable of the worst, and it's time for people to choose sides. No more it's good for the economy.
Well, you know,
I see Republicans
I
speaking
think
out publicly.
There certainly has always been a hesitation to draw parallels. I will say that, again, you always want to be careful, and people say, well, we should never draw parallels between the presidency or any political party and fascism. I must say, the chant the other night was the first of its kind that I can remember in my lifetime. I think if somebody that is critical of you or critical of me for suggesting that this sounded like a rally in Germany in the early 1930s where people were chanting, send them back, when they were actually citizens of Germany, and in this case, citizens of the United States of America. If there is a better analogy for those who want to be critical today, I would love to hear it, because I am, you know, I'm a very optimistic guy. Mika will tell you she finds it maddeningly just tiresome how optimistic I am. But unlike a lot of those Republican members of Congress, I can dismiss Donald Trump, some of the stupid things he says, and I can say, well, you know what? The voters, they're going to have their say a year from now. But when thousands of Americans in the audience chant, send her back, to a member of Congress because of her color, because she's a Muslim, or just as frightening, Lindsey Graham says, oh, well, it's because she doesn't support Donald Trump. We are now talking about an ethnic cleansing politically, an ethnic cleansing politically of people who do not support our side.
Joe, good for you using those words, Joe. Good for you. It's brave to use those words, and I'm glad you did, because we need to start talking that way.
Nobody's being killed. Nobody's being put on trains. But there is no doubt that the argument that is coming from Donald Trump, and again, more frighteningly, from the crowd chanting it, is this is a white nation. Who are these black women?
Yeah.
Who are these Muslims to tell us how to run our country? I'll tell you who they are. They're immigrants. Well, they're not even immigrants. One's an immigrant. And you know who else was an immigrant? Albert Einstein.
Right.
Came during the middle of World War II. Helped us win World War II. How many immigrants do we have in Silicon Valley right now that have created this new world for us, that have given us a competitive advantage over the world in the age of technology? You know the answer to it. Almost every company, every major company, run by immigrants. And yet you have Donald Trump and the Republican Party and conservatives all saying that what Donald Trump said, send her back, was okay. It wasn't until the crowd started chanting, and it did sound, if not Nuremberg, again. Well, please help me out. Tell me what other countries do this. I promise you, whatever answer you give me today, it's not going to be good. This stuff doesn't happen in Canada, doesn't happen, you know, in other democracies. It's only happening here right now, and we've got to call it what it is. It's frightening. It's undemocratic. It goes against all of our American traditions, and it must be called out it must be stopped.
And Joe, one addition is, you say no one's being lined up, put on trains, but we do have people seeking asylum and migrants coming to America in desperate situations, being separated, having their babies taken away from them, or family members having babies taken away from them. We still don't know where some of the families are to reunite them. We have people in horrendous conditions. We have reports of sexual abuse and sexual assault in these detention facilities. We have people being put in cages and held there.
And
in
by the
huge
way,
numbers.
and 3-year-old babies being
So-
told they have to choose between their mother or their father.
I would just-
We actually have border agents also who set up this Facebook page mocking those that they are supposed to be protecting, making commemorative coins that mock the very people they're trying to help. And one final thing, Mika, I just have to say, and it's tiresome that I have to say this. I'm very conservative when it comes to immigration. I'm very conservative when it comes to illegal immigration. And yes, that's what I call it, illegal immigration, because if you come to America illegally, then you're an illegal immigrant. But it's tiresome that I have to say this.
Yeah.
When you come to America seeking asylum, that is a legal action. And that is an action that actually defines who we are as a nation and has defined who we have been as a nation for over 200 years. The Statue of Liberty is more than a symbol. It is a promise to the world. And that's the promise that Donald Trump and this administration and this Republican Congress is breaking every day. We can be tough at the border. We can do everything we can do, like Barack Obama did, to make sure that illegal immigration drops to 50-year lows. And it did drop to 50-year lows under Barack Obama. And we can do that, and we can still welcome refugees to these shores. That's what America has done, and that's what America is going to do again.
And having said that, coming up, DHS Secretary Kevin McAleenan was in the hot seat on Capitol Hill yesterday answering lawmakers' questions about the conditions at migrant detention centers. We'll talk to a member of the House Oversight Committee, Congresswoman Robin Kelly, next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.